AM, you've just won the Women's Prize for Fiction, which is fantastic. It's the result everybody wanted. It's the result I wanted.
Right, exactly.
So suppose I'm looking at this video and I've never read any of your work. What are you going to tell me about
That's going to change your mind now.
May We Be Forgiven?
I'm going to tell you better read it. It's a wild ride sort of through contemporary America, really. And you probably can tell better what the book is about. I'm the worst at telling what the book is about, Jeanette. It's about two nutty, angry brothers and a Cain and Abel sibling rivalry, and then building family where there was none.
And there's a subplot, which is about Nixon.
Yes, Richard Nixon.
Yeah.
Lest he be confused with any other Nixon.
Why? Because that subplot's a big part of the story.
Yeah. You know, I think Nixon is a fascinating figure, and I think I also like the parallel of Nixon and this sort of enigmatic figure with the brothers. And I think it's amazing that Nixon was ever elected president. I mean, he was like this bitter, hostile, friendless man who became president. And at the same time, he did a lot of sort of interesting things in addition to Watergate, which I think inspired a whole generation of presidents that followed. But he opened relations with China, which is sort of a lot in the book.
Yes.
And now China owns more U.S. debt than any other country, and everything that we in America play with or wear is essentially made in China. So there's a lot of threads in there.
And if there's a devoted fan of A.M. Homes like myself who's read everything but hasn't read this one yet, what are they reading? Are they reading vintage A.M.? Are they reading New Homes for Old? You know, how does this fit with the rest of your work?
I think that what this does actually is it, in a way, goes back to my first novel, Jack, when I wrote when I was 19, which is about a boy whose parents are divorced, and he finds out it's because his father is gay, and he has to understand what that means to him. And that's very much a book about family, a book about a boy and his father, and that character and those ideas are equally present. Is it 25 years later or 30? I don't know. It's a long time later in this book, as well as really the interest in weaving history and a kind of social commentary and sort of big ideas, as well as the intimacies of family life.
The big ideas are all there, which is what I love about your work. I think this is the great American novel. Is there such a thing as the great American novel?
I looked it up, actually, because I thought someone at some point is going to ask me about this.
It's me, sorry.
And the great American novel is meant not just as a critical judgment of like, oh, this is a great restaurant. It's meant really as the large American novel and the expansive American novel. And I think in those terms, that's definitely something I was going for, that I wanted to write a big book about America and a book that spans a lot of concerns. There's a lot in the book also about how technology has changed our relationship to ourselves and to each other, and that sort of fissure that occurs when you become sort of the internet version of yourself. So there's all the same themes for me of private life versus public life are there, but in a much sort of, I don't know, simultaneously denser and more rollicking weave.
And do you think it's something that women writers are really good at? I mean, that getting both the subtleties and the seductions of those tensions between the private and the public, because we don't box things off in the same way I think that men do in every capacity, whether they're writers or not.
I know. You know, the truth is, but I look at like Harold Pinter.
Yeah.
He got that. He was a man. I mean, I don't think it's necessarily a gender thing.
So you don't think it's a strength that you have as a woman writer?
I don't think of it in that way. I mean, I don't attribute it to gender. I attribute it to kind of a psychological point of view. I'm always looking at human behavior and why we do what we do and what that means to us.
You always use, anyway, or almost always, a male persona.
Yeah.
I mean, not in the memoir, obviously,
right.
because you can't.
Yeah.
And that's interesting, because you use a male persona, and people think, well, why does she do that? Because she's a woman. And you also call yourself A.M. Homes. So there's a blanking out of gender there when we look at the title page, and then when we go into it, we could think, say we knew nothing about you, we might think, here's A.M. Homes, this must be some guy, because this person's always writing, you know, that might be an assumption. So what's all that about?
Well, I would say now that I've won the Women's Prize, there we go.
You're really screwed.
Yes, exactly. The cat's out of the bag now. I mean, I think it's a couple things. I think that certainly probably at least 2 or 3 of the books, if not more, also are written from a female point of view.
And this question of the male voice being the voice of authority, do you have any unease around that, or any queasiness? I mean,
Well, I think the good news is, and I actually think if you look at this award, it's changing. And I think if you take any year and you look at the body of work written by women writers internationally, and you really see that it is substantial, and there are historical books and long books and books that are not just about dusting, and you begin to realize that there is an incredible range being written, then it redefines what that voice of authority is.
And do you think there is any resistance, say, to you as a woman, you know, writing these big books, and what that means, whether it's conscious or unconscious?
I think, interestingly, at least from my point of view, there's less resistance here in the UK than there is in America.
I think that's true.
I think traditionally, you know, there have been plenty of big women writers, big women English writers writing big books. And I think in the US you have to be named Jonathan. And I told you, I just didn't get the memo. I had no idea. I would have divided it into 2 smaller books just so people felt more comfortable.
But with a writer like you, it's going to change. And you think with something like the Women's Prize that helps it to change? Because there's a lot of argument about whether we should have these separate specific prizes. What do you think?
Well, I think what's interesting in terms of me specifically in the Women's Prize, I think the fact that I've written a book that is written from a male point of view, in which a man kills his wife 30 pages in, and I have the damn initials. It's amazing to me that they gave me the prize, because you could say that they might want to give it to sort of a more traditional woman writer, who is more, you know, and I think that they didn't, and that it went to somebody who's taking those risks. Also is a testament to the quality of the prize over the years, that it really has gone to very interesting work. You won it. You know, lots of wonderful writers have won it. I think it's significant. And in terms of, do we need that prize? I think, yes, any prize we can have, we need. And that's not just gender related. I think it's about being a writer at a specific point in time. And then all the more, again, to look at what women are doing, to just separate that out for a moment, the way Wikipedia just recently separated out all the women novelists.
Which is extraordinary.
Right. So we're no longer novelists, we're women novelists.
Which is something I really hate.
Right.
I hated more only by saying you're a gay woman novelist.
Right.
And you think, how many prefixes can you put in front of the fact?
Exactly.
This is what I do. You know, how can you quantify
with curly
and box
hair?
it?
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, it becomes, you know, I think honestly, for me and most writers I know, you know, what all you want to be identified as is a writer.
Tell me this: what does forgiveness mean to you?
I want it to mean an enormous amount to me, and I want it to be possible. I think that we hold on to feelings of anger or disappointment or loss in ways that ultimately are self-destructive. And I think if you can allow yourself to forgive those that you have those feelings for, there is a sense of liberation and a sense of being able to move on. But it's interesting because I really, all the more I'm going through a situation where I'm realizing that, once again, it's really hard to do that. And it takes a very conscious act that's almost bigger than oneself to forgive and go forward.
And do you think fiction can help us as individuals to find that forgiveness, that possibility of going forward?
I think fiction can help us find everything. You know, I think that in fiction you can say things and in a way be truer than you can be in real life and truer than you can be in nonfiction. There's an accuracy to fiction that people don't really talk about, an emotional accuracy.
And does the writing matter?
One hopes it does. The quality of the writing, the actual writing?
Yes, or is it?
I mean, it's too depressing to think that it doesn't matter. I think what's interesting is that no longer do people talk about the quality of the writing. They don't seem to notice.
No, they don't.
And I find that horrifying.
I know,
because
it's
I think,
really upsetting.
well, I spent 3 extra years on just the quality of the writing. You know, somebody should notice.
And perhaps that is because of Twitter, Facebook,
Maybe.
Also the speed reading that we do every day, because we've never read so much so fast all of the time.
Yes.
And therefore what happens is language a casualty of that speed?
I think absolutely, yeah.
But so if we were to read your novel, say we were to sit down now and read them all the way through from beginning to end, what would happen?
You would be changed.
That's enough. Thank you.